Hello, welcome to this update for the tropics in the Western Pacific and South China Sea. Let's take a look. We have this new area of investigation, already a medium chance of a formation there in the South China Sea near Vietnam. Let's see what they have. So this is the satellite is very disorganized now, but you can see a lot of heavy rains affecting Vietnam, Laos, and some other areas, and the low pressure there. And then there are some tracks, mostly they're taking this kind of north, but most tracks kill it before making landfall. Some have it going to China and one to Vietnam, but this is not expected to be anything very strong. There's this here, and then there are these other tracks here, and in this case there are more of them going to Vietnam there, and some kind of going to China, but we will have to keep monitoring it. Let's see here. Some models maybe. Wait. Here, Western Pacific. So it's that area down there near China and Vietnam. You can see the weak low pressure there tries to form, but not really forms into anything. Just maybe a short-lived tropical depression, or not even that maybe, but it'll be very short-lived. And the main thing with this will be the heavy rains. It might cause in Southeast Asia, and it's already causing there in those areas. So just be aware of the rains and everything, but it's not expected to turn into anything major. But to the east there in the Philippines, we also have a low pressure that might approach there and bring us some more heavy rains to the Philippines by next Monday there. And then it shows even another low pressure approaching by next Thursday and Friday, and going into the South China Sea and possibly forming something there in the South China Sea. And then the GFS has gone haywire, and it's showing this gigantic system there, like category 5 typhoon, about July 23rd in the middle of the Pacific there. But don't trust this much. This is too exaggerated. But it takes it into Japan or the southern islands of Japan there, and then into China as a super typhoon. But please take this as a grain of salt. This model does some crazy stuff, and then it has another one for forming back behind it later, and going in that same general area, possibly more stuff later. So I showed you just so you can see what's happening and everything, but take that giant typhoon as a grain of salt for now. We have to keep watching. And this is the European model now. It has the low pressure there of that system near Vietnam and China, and then it kind of wobbles around there and goes into Vietnam later, but it's like very weak, like less than a tropical depression, I think. So that will be very weak, just causing some heavy rains there. And then later, let's see. It kind of shows those low pressures near the Philippines, kind of bringing some heavy rain, but nothing major. Let's see the 0Z from yesterday, if it has something in the long term. So let's see. Nothing. So by this time the GFS had a super typhoon, and the Euro has nothing. So we gotta keep watching. This is the Canadian model. It shows the low pressure there of that system affecting Southeast Asia and then dissipating there. So just something weak and some heavy rains. Then it has that other low pressure kind of approaching as a tropical storm into the Philippines there, but like scraping the Philippines and then going into Taiwan and China later. So this is the Canadian model. It's another possibility. You never know. Then it turns into I think a non-tropical low pressure system and goes into the Koreas and Russia later. But all models have it differently, so you never know what might actually play out. And then it has kind of another low pressure forming the South China Sea later, it kind of going to China and Vietnam as something weak. And in the long range, it doesn't have much too. So we better keep watching it. So in the short range, just be careful with the heavy rains in Vietnam, Thailand, Laos, Cambodia, and be careful with flash flooding and stuff there. So let's see, in the next 24 hours, just in Vietnam, because of the heavy rains from that system, more than 198 millimeters. And then in the next 3 days, those heavy rains spread over Laos, parts of Thailand, Cambodia too. So it shows in parts of Thailand like 146 millimeters, 133 in parts of Laos, 160, 141 millimeters. Further north it's better here in northern Laos, only a little rain, but in those central southern areas of Laos it will be very rainy and dangerous because of flash floods. So in northern Cambodia shows more than 128 millimeters in some areas, and further south it's better, just like 47 millimeters. But southwestern Cambodia along the sea there shows more than 130 millimeters in many areas. So be aware there too in southern Cambodia. So this is in the next 3 days. In southern Vietnam it's kind of fine, just on 60 millimeters in some areas. The main hazard is in central Vietnam there. And then in the next 5 days it accumulates even more. So between Laos and Thailand shows more than 200 millimeters in the next 5 days, parts of central Laos and Thailand. And let's see, in other areas of Thailand here, more than 200 millimeters in many areas. Even southern Thailand and southern Cambodia there, more than 200, even 300 millimeters in those areas. So very dangerous, heavy rainfall, be careful. In southern Myanmar here, it shows more than 160 millimeters, 200 millimeters in some areas of the coast there. And yeah, let's see. In northern Vietnam it has more in the next 5 days already, around some 100 millimeters in some areas. And then the GFS here, this other model, it has less than the Euro, but it still has in parts of Laos and Thailand around more than 100 millimeters. Vietnam it has less, has around 90 millimeters, but I trust the Euro more. Let's see, Cambodia has around 100 in some areas, especially southern Cambodia there and southern Thailand. I think this is western Cambodia actually. And for Myanmar it has way more, about 400 millimeters. So all these models are play out differently, so you can never know 100% for sure what will happen, but you better be ready in all the cases. And around the Philippines there, it has around 300 millimeters in parts of those islands the next 5 days, 156 millimeters in those like central southern islands, more central islands, so a lot of heavy rain. This in the next 5 days. Next 3 days it has less, just around 100 in some islands there. But this is the GFS, the Euro model has it way less than the GFS. So because he has the system kind of going in a different path. So let's see. But it has in the next 5 days more than 100 millimeters in some islands too, there in the Philippines. So be aware too of heavy rains and some flood advisories. Let's see, 112, and then in the next 10 days it already has more, of course. But meanwhile, in the next 5 days, just some areas of 60, 100 millimeters. So be aware. Let's see. And since we are already here doing this video, let's update on India. It shows some areas of more than 200 millimeters in the next 5 days in central India. 260, especially in the west coast, has some areas of possibly 300 millimeters in the west coast of India there. 300 millimeters all in the west coast, and some in southwestern Sri Lanka there. So be aware. But these rains might be troubling there in parts of India, so be careful. It has some 80s, 90s, and even 100 in some areas in parts of Nepal, northeastern India, some areas more than 200 and 100. Bangladesh a little bit better, except for northeastern Bangladesh. Northern Myanmar, it has a lot too in some areas of northern Myanmar. And China has some spots in China with more than 300 millimeters in the next 5 days, especially more than 200 parts of the central areas and some areas of the east coast because of these systems. Going to North and South Korea there, more than 100 millimeters. And then Japan in the next 5 days shows more than 100 millimeters in some areas there. So be aware. Let's see the rain map here. So shows the system there in Vietnam and the heavy rains there, and the monsoon in India there. So keep watching. You can see the heavy rains going to Laos, more storms in India, in Nepal, in some areas. Then this is by Monday, so by late Monday it shows still very heavy rains in Laos and Cambodia, those areas. More storms in India, there in Myanmar too, more rains going to Thailand. So this by Monday night going to Tuesday, we might have some thunderstorm outbreaks in Thailand. More storms in India and rain western India, some storms in Nepal and northeastern India. And let's see, and later it kind of disperses and the tropical rains continue there, but still heavy in many areas, so be careful. The storms continue in India there because of the monsoon. And yeah, let's see China and Japan. So going to Monday shows already some heavy rains parts of Japan, some storms in China too, and Mongolia. But by like Monday morning, afternoon, shows a big system in Mongolia there, bringing some heavy rains. Monday into Tuesday here, still some storms in China, going to North and South Korea by Wednesday, and some storms in Japan too. And then this goes into Russia there. And Thursday, but by next Thursday, some more storms in China, in parts of Japan, and then more stuff later in the Koreas and everything. So this is it. Stay safe and warn others.